my name is Lindsey, and today I will be talking to you about the career path of an editor. So we're all English or writing majors here. How many of you have been asked the question, what are you going to do with that? Pretty much all of us. Yeah. Pretty much the standard question is, are you going to be a teacher? And I'm lucky because I'm also in the teaching program. But what's nice about my major is that it's primarily an English major with an education minor. So this is a career path that I could look forward to maybe one day if I decide, oh, I don't like kids and I don't want to teach anymore. So I know there's a lot of information here, but we're going to take it kind of step by step and look at each part of it so that we can kind of understand what exactly all goes into becoming an editor. So the first part up here is, what degree do you need? You need a basic 4-year bachelor degree. Primarily it should be in English, writing, communications, or something that's similar. Now, while having a minor in English or communications alone it's okay, they prefer for you to have a major. Now, if you say I'm a double major in English and writing, or in English and communications, or multiple, that's even better, but this is kind of the bare minimum that you want to have, 4 years in English, communications, or writing. Next, let's look at your experience. Most editorial jobs require some sort of entry-level editorial position, so maybe you are an intern for an editing company, or you were, I don't want to say a secretary, but you kind of ran papers for an editor. You were kind of an assistant, that type of thing. So that's what primarily you want as an experience-wise job, but it is possible for the smaller companies, which we're going to talk about next, for you to get in just off the bat. So some of the companies that I want to talk about, I researched quite a few smaller editing companies. Now, we talked about this a little bit in class about how there's lots of editing companies out there that are scams, and they will take your papers and they will take your novels that you've spent years on and they will destroy them. So I spent a lot of time looking up these 3 different companies, making sure that they're good, they're small, they're kind of like family companies, if you get the idea. So the first one I want to talk about is Grey Wolf Press. I can actually take you to the link. Okay, Grey Wolf Press is a really small, like I said, publishing company that is kind of like a modern mix of theater and poetry and stuff that kind of goes outside the boundaries. It's not your typical, this is my 8-series novel type stuff. It focuses more on short stories and poetry, like I said, and creative nonfiction, and they really like to kind of stretch the bounds of what is supposed to be normal thinking in today. So that's one of those companies. I also did Forest Avenue Press. They'll let me go to this one. It doesn't work. We go down there. The other link doesn't work either, so I'm just going to talk a little bit. They are similar. Both Grey Wolf Press and Tin House are both small editing companies that are very similar to Forest Avenue Press. All of those 3 companies are small, family type styles that all look for, they each have a different thing. Like I think we talked about Grey Wolf Press first, was the poetry more so. Forest Avenue Press works more with longer novels, and they like fiction, and they like longer pieces, so if you've got a novel and you want to send it to them, they would probably appreciate that. And Tin House is kind of a mashup of all 3. So next I want to talk a little bit about what Mount offers for us, which are like the strengths and the weaknesses with the majors. So I didn't specifically I did look at them, but I didn't want to put them on the paper, is the classes. But some of the strengths that we have is that a lot of the classes that we have to take in the English and writing major are that we have to have strong communication, we have to do presentations all the time, and we have to get our experience out there, learning with that. So that's one of the things that helps us get into this major more. You also have to explore writing. You have to take, for the writing major, you have to take like some Irish literature courses, Native American literature. You have to kind of explore the world around you, look at the different ideas, along with the fact that you also have to interpret various kinds of literature. You don't just have to say, well, I need to read this book. You look at poetry. You look at even theater pieces, everything. You have to kind of go into all of those scopes. Now, some of the drawbacks is that a lot of the skills that these editorial companies are looking for are skills that draw from both of the English and writing majors, and even some from communications. Now, if you've looked at like the English writing four-year plan next to the writing four-year plan, there's not a lot of overlap. If you're in the writing major, you really don't take any English classes that have like the ENG prefix, versus when you're in the English major, you don't really take a lot of writing prefix courses. So that's one of the drawbacks, which is just that there's not very much overlap, which I think would be helpful if you're looking to become an editor. Now, some of the skills that we need is basic. Good spelling, good grammar, you know how to use the Oxford comma. Kind of like Dr. Cordero was saying when we were writing our resumes for the job fair, is that we are held to a different standard. If someone sees your resume and, you know, you misspelled something on there, like, well, they're an English major, isn't that, you know, what they're supposed to know? Isn't that what they're supposed to do? So that really plays into effect when you're becoming an editor, because they need to be good with words, they need to be good with grammar, they need to be able to catch small things on paper that normally most people wouldn't see. You also have to be able to communicate. A lot of times when you are talking to the author of a piece that you're working on, they don't want to hear what you have to say. They say, I want to publish this just how it is. Like, that's not how it works. You need to be able to take creative feedback, and you need to be able to give it. Not saying, I'm criticizing you as a person, I'm not criticizing your work either, I'm just giving you feedback saying, you might want to change this, and so on. You also obviously have to have reading comprehension, be able to understand what the writer is conveying, be able to help them build on that. And lastly, up in this corner, we're going to look at some statistics, and these are all from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the job outlook, which is very dismal, is 1%, which means there's not a lot of growth and not a lot of adding jobs to it. This is the number of approximate jobs that we're looking at right now, based from 2016 to 2026. And the employment change is about 1,800. So it's not fantastic. It really isn't. But if that's really what you want to go to, you got to find connections, which I'll talk about after this page, and make connections, get out there, talk to people. Like Julia came in last week. She's a really great connection to have to kind of get into that world. So if you do want to become an editor and that's your dream, it is possible. It's just not most likely. Now the median income is kind of like Sarah was saying, nothing to kick the bucket over for. It's not spectacular, about 58 grand, which averages out to about $28 an hour, a little 28 and a half for a quarter. And I will talk a little bit more about how fluctuating the rate is with pay, specifically in editors. So that's all of that information up there. And lastly, I want to talk about who I contacted. Her name is Emily King. She was super nice. I emailed her. She's an editor. She was one of the contacts that Dr. Cordero gave me. Awesome. She gave me like 5 pages, which is, you know, the response from an English major. She was super nice. She is a freelance, where's my button here? Okay, wrong button. There we go. She's a freelance editor. She works through her own company. That's linked on the bottom. It's Emily King Editing. So people come to her and ask her to edit her books, and they hire her and such like that. So one of the things that we were talking about earlier was the pay. There's not really a steady paycheck. That's one of the things, that's one of the big drawbacks of being specifically a freelance editor, is that yes, you have the statistic earlier where it's like about 28 and a quarter per hour, but when you're working as a freelance editor, that's not guaranteed. You don't necessarily know where your next paycheck is coming from because you don't know when the next job is going to come through. So that's one of the drawbacks from being an editor. But she did say that one of the things that she loves about this is that she gets to help writers say what they want. She gets to have people give her their life's work and say, you know, I've put my heart and soul into this, and she gets to help them see, well, this isn't exactly conveying what you wanted to say. Let me help you show what you want to say. And that's also why she works primarily on nonfiction books and some shorter documents, creative nonfiction, even a little bit of poetry, that sort of stuff. So that's what she really enjoys saying. And she also said she really loves the process of watching a book come together. She gave me like the play-by-play, each step, what happens in the editing process, which was awesome, but way too long to talk about right now. And so that is about it. Thank you.
All right.